A man punched a royal guardsman in front of thousands of people. You have no idea what happened a few minutes later. In the heart of London, on one of the busiest streets, an annual festival was held, which attracted thousands of people. The city was decorated with flags and the spirit of celebration was in the air. Hundreds of people came to see the parade of the royal family and the royal guards, who always attracted attention with their strict appearance and impeccable discipline. Standing among the crowd was Jack, a 32-year-old man with bright green eyes and an indomitable spirit. He has always been known for his courage and willingness to stand up for his beliefs. On this day, he came with friends full of expectation and joy. They discussed the latest news, laughed and shared their impressions of past events. For Jack, it was a day when he could take his mind off everyday worries and enjoy the atmosphere of fun. The crowd was diverse, families with children, young couples, and the elderly. Everyone was looking for some kind of entertainment. Someone was taking pictures. Someone was dancing to the music of street musicians. The smell of roasted chestnuts and cotton candy was in the air. Jack felt like he was a part of this big celebration. In parallel with him, there was a family with a small boy in the crowd, who was looking forward to the moment when he could see the guards up close. The boy was holding a camera in his hands and dreamed of taking the perfect photo to remember this day. His parents tried to keep him enthusiastic, telling him how important it was to capture such moments. When the parade started, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. The guards walked with precision and grace, their uniforms sparkling in the sun. The crowd cheered them enthusiastically, and Jack was no exception. He felt proud of his country and its traditions. However, at that moment, something went wrong. Jack noticed how one of the guards, named Richard, rudely pushed away a small boy who was trying to take a photo. The boy got scared and dropped the camera on the ground. Jack's heart began to beat faster. He couldn't stay away when he saw such behavior. Chapter 2. The Challenge. Jack made his way through the crowd and approached the guardsman. "Hey, you have no right to treat children like that," he shouted, causing thousands of people to look at him. Richard, accustomed to strict discipline and respect for his position, only looked at Jack coldly, but he didn't stop. Suddenly overcome with anger and a sense of justice, Jack punched the guardsman on the shoulder. The crowd froze. Time seemed to have stopped. People were shocked by what had happened. Richard, who had not expected such behavior, turned to Jack with bewilderment and anger on his face. "You just made a big mistake," he said with a threat in his voice. Soon, other guards and police officers approached the scene of the incident. Jack felt fear creep over him. He knew that the consequences of his actions could be serious. However, at this moment, his pride wouldn't let him back down. The police quickly detained Jack and led him out of the crowd. People whispered among themselves. Some supported his courage, others condemned his aggression towards the representative of the crown. Chapter 3. Detention. Jack was taken to the police station, where he was informed of possible charges of assaulting a royal guardsman. He understood that his action could have serious consequences for his future. The next day, headlines appeared in the newspapers about a brave citizen who dared to challenge the royal authority. However, the articles also raised the issue of the need to respect law and order. As Jack sat in the waiting room, he reflected on his actions. He felt lost and scared. His mind wandered to the moment when he decided to intervene. He understood that he had acted impulsively and could have handled the situation differently. A police officer approached him. "Do you realize what you've done?" "What is it?" he asked with a tired voice. "I just wanted to protect the child," Jack replied, trying to justify his actions. "Defense is one thing, but offense is quite another. You should have contacted one of us or the child's parents. Now you can get a real sentence for assaulting a government official." Jack felt a chill of fear run down his spine. He realized the gravity of the situation and began to realize the consequences of his impulsive act. Chapter 4. Judicial Proceedings. At the court hearing, Jack defended himself. He explained his actions by saying that he wanted to protect an innocent child and protest against rudeness. But the judge, hearing his arguments, just shook his head. "Regardless of your intentions, you have violated the law and endangered a representative of the crown," the judge said. "You will have to take responsibility for this." Jack was sentenced to community service and fined. He understood that his actions were thoughtless, but it was a lesson in how important it is to control your emotions and act wisely. After the court hearing, Jack went outside, feeling drained. He knew that his life had changed forever. He was supposed to do community service hours at a local orphanage. It was a punishment, but also a chance to change my life for the better. Chapter 5. A New Path. From the first days of working at the shelter, Jack faced many difficulties. The children were full of energy and often moody. His task was to teach them self-defense and self-confidence. He understood that this could help them avoid similar situations in the future. Jack started conducting self-defense classes for children. He taught them the basics of physical activity and how to respond to aggression from other people. Gradually, he gained the trust of the children. They began to perceive him not as a punishment or threat, but as someone who really cares about them. One day during class, a little girl named Lily approached him with a question. "Have you ever fought yourself?" Jack thought for a moment. He remembered that day at the festival and all the consequences of his actions. "Yes, I fought once, but I realized that this is not always the best way to solve problems. Sometimes it's better to talk or just get away from the conflict." Lily looked at him in disbelief. "But if someone offends you, how will you protect yourself?" Jack smiled. Defense is not always about fighting. Sometimes it's just the ability to say no or avoid conflict. The main thing is to stay strong inside. Chapter 6. Changes. Over time, Jack noticed changes not only in the children, but also in himself. Working at the orphanage helped him find a new purpose in life. He began to understand the importance of patience and compassion. He became more attentive to others and learned to listen to their stories. One day, during one of the classes, Jack decided to tell the children about his experience at the festival. He explained to them how important it is to control your emotions and make informed decisions. "I wanted to do something good, but my actions led to bad consequences. I want you to know that sometimes it's better to just stop and think before you act." The children listened attentively to his words. They started asking questions about how to respond to aggression and how to find peaceful ways to resolve conflicts. Chapter 7. The Turning Point. It took several months before Jack completed his community service. He became a part of the orphanage's life and developed strong relationships with the children and staff. When it was time to say goodbye, the children arranged a small celebration for him. Lily came up to him with a small Gifta homemade album with photos of their classes together and notes about what they had learned from him. "Thank you for everything," she said with a smile on her face. Jack felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that his choice to intervene in the situation at the festival was not in vain. It had brought him to this moment. Soon after, Jack decided to stay at the shelter as a volunteer. His experience working with children opened up new horizons for him. He began developing programs to teach children communication and conflict resolution skills. Chapter 8. Reconciliation. Meanwhile, Richard, the guardsman who was the victim of Jack's impulsive act, was also going through his own changes. After the incident, he began to think about how his actions might have affected other people. He decided to take a course in communication psychology and conflict management. One day, they met at one of the events for young people. Jack didn't recognize Richard at first. He looked more relaxed and open. "Hello," Richard said with a slight smile. "We've both been through difficult times." Jack felt relieved. They began to discuss their experiences and the lessons they had learned from their mistakes. "I understand you more now than before," Richard said. "I was too strict that day, and I'm sorry for that behavior." Jack nodded. "We both made mistakes, but the important thing is that we can learn from them and become better." Richard offered Jack a collaboration. They began conducting workshops together for young people on how to deal with aggression and conflict without using force. Over time, Jack became a well-known figure in his community. His work inspired many people to help other children cope with the difficulties of life. He organized fundraising events for the shelter and other social programs. Emily continued to attend classes. Over time, she became more confident in herself. She began speaking in front of other children with stories about her experiences and how important it is to talk about your feelings. Once, during such a performance, she said, "I used to be afraid to talk about my problems, but now I know that if you're talking about it out loud, you're not alone." Jack was proud of her progress. He understood that his work mattered and helped other people find their way to healing. Chapter 10. Rethinking. Despite all the changes in Jack's life, he continued to reflect on that incident at the festival. He understood the importance of courage, but also the need for wisdom in his actions. One day, he met up with one of his old friends, Mike, who had witnessed the event at the festival. "You know, I've been thinking about this incident," said Mike. "You really changed after that day." Jack smiled. "Yes, I realized a lot of things about myself and how important it is to be attentive to my actions." Mike nodded. "I'm proud of you. You've turned your experience into something positive for other people." These words inspired Jack to continue his work. He understood that every action matters, even if it starts with a mistake. Chapter 11. The Future. As the years passed, Jack continued to work on himself and help others find their way to healing and self-confidence. His initiative to teach children self-defense skills expanded. He began collaborating with various organizations to create programs to combat bullying and youth violence. Emily became one of the leading youth activists. She organized events to raise awareness about the problems of violence among teenagers. Jack was proud of the fact that he was able to help her find her purpose in life. One day, they held a seminar together for parents on how to support their children in difficult times. Jack shared his experience about that incident at the festival. I want to tell you that sometimes our actions can have unpredictable consequences, but it's important to remember, we can learn from our mistakes and get better every day. Conclusion. Despite the difficulties of the past, Jack found his way to redemption through helping others. His story became a reminder that even the most impulsive actions can lead to positive changes if you are able to learn from your mistakes and use your experience for the benefit of others. And while he paid the price for his courage that day at the festival, he also learned an important lesson about how best to stand up for his beliefs with respect and understanding for others around him. In the end, Jack's story became a symbol of change, both for himself and for the children he helped. His courage turned into strength for others. He became a source of inspiration for many people around him. Every new day brought new opportunities for growth and change. Jack knew that the most important thing was to stay true to his beliefs and use his power for the benefit of others. Extended version, continue. Chapter 12. The Challenge of Time. After Jack completed his community service at the shelter and volunteered there, he began to think about how else he could help children from disadvantaged families cope with the difficulties of life. He noticed that many of them had experienced not only physical violence from peers or adults, they had emotional trauma from the lack of support from parents or guardians. He decided to create a mentoring program for teenagers, an initiative that would connect children with adult mentors from different fields of life, art, sports, and science. Jack understood the importance of positive role models for building confidence among young people. To realize his idea, he needed to attract funding and support from local organizations. He began meeting with various charities and businessmen in the city. Each time, he shared his story from the moment of his impulsive act to working in a shelter, showing people the importance of supporting young people in difficult circumstances. The first meeting with potential sponsors took place in a cozy cafe near the city center. Several local businessmen were sitting at the table, owners of clothing stores, restaurants, and small companies. Jack felt a little nervous. He needed to convince them to invest time and resources in his mentoring program. "Thank you all for coming today," he began his speech. "I'm not just here to ask you for help. I want to share my experience working with children from disadvantaged families." He told them his story, how he once intervened to protect a child at a festival, and how this incident led him to work at a shelter. People listened attentively to his words. Some even wrote down notes about what he was saying. "I believe," Jack continued, "that each of us can be a source of inspiration to the youth around us. If we join forces and create a mentoring program for these children, we can change their lives for the better." His speech was followed by questions. Some wanted to know more about how the program would work. Others were interested in the steps that had already been taken to implement it. Chapter 14. Successes. A few months have passed since the first meeting with potential sponsors. Thanks to Jack's persistence, the mentoring program began to take real forms. He managed to attract several local businessmen to participate. They agreed to provide funding to launch the program and help find mentors among their employees or acquaintances. Jack organized the first meeting of mentors and teenagers at the local youth center. Each mentor introduced himself to the children. They shared their success stories about the path they had followed in their lives before achieving success in their profession or hobby. Emily also came to this meeting. She was already a senior student and decided to become a mentor for the younger children of the orphanage. "I want to show other children," she said, "that they can achieve anything. I've been through difficult times myself, but now I know that if you have support nearby, you can handle anything." Chapter 15. Problems on the horizon. However, not everything went smoothly. The program faced difficulties in the early stages of its existence. Some children were unhappy with the fact that they were assigned mentors. They did not trust adults after the experience of violence or neglect by parents or guardians. One day, during a meeting, one of the teenagers raised his hand. "Why do we need these adults? We can take care of ourselves." Jack understood his feelings. He himself had once experienced similar emotions after an incident at a festival. However, he also knew the importance of trust between mentor and ward. "I understand your concerns," he said calmly, "but I want to show you that adults can also be reliable allies. We are not here to control you, but to help you find your way. Chapter 16. Breakthrough. Gradually, the atmosphere began to change. The children began to open up to their mentors through personal meetings outside the group. They began to share their experiences about bullying or other problems of life. One day, Emily held a meeting with a group of teenage girls. "I know, it might be scary for you to open up to us," she said. "But remember, we are all here for you. You are not alone, and your feelings are important." After this meeting, the girls became more open. They began to share their feelings about bullying from their peers or dissatisfaction with their families. Emily was amazed by the fact how much these conversations helped the girls feel better. She understood this is exactly the kind of support children from disadvantaged families need. Despite the success of the mentoring program, problems arose. One day, Jack received a message from one of the mentors that one of the teenagers was missing. At the same time, he became aware that some children began to communicate with questionable companies outside the program. That was a worrying sign. Jack called all the mentors together for an emergency meeting. "We need to deal with this situation. We need to understand why some children start to leave us. And how can we help them come back?" The mentors began discussing their observations of the teenagers. Some said they had seen them interacting with people from disadvantaged areas of the city. It was a worrying sign, but Jack knew they had to act fast. Chapter 18. Finding Solutions. Jack organized a meeting with the parents of teenagers to discuss the problems that had arisen in the mentoring program. Many parents attended the meeting. "We are worried about our children. They became introverted, and we don't know what's going on." Jack listened to their concerns. "I understand your worries, but we must work together to help our children. We need to create a space where they can openly talk about their feelings." The meeting ended with the parents promising to support the mentoring program. It was an important step forward. Chapter 19. Regaining Trust. With the help of his parents, Jack managed to organize several open meetings for teenagers where they could freely discuss their problems. At one of these meetings, Emily performed in front of the band again. "I know that it may be scary for you to open up, but trust me, it will help you feel better. We are all here to support each other." Some teenagers started sharing their experiences, and soon the atmosphere became more trusting. Jack watched this process from the sidelines. He was pleased to see how the children were beginning to open up to each other. Chapter 20. The Turning Point. A few weeks after the start of the open meetings, Jack received a message from one of his parents. "Thank you for your work. My son has become more open, and now he's sharing his problems with us." It was a real success. Jack understood that their efforts were beginning to bear fruit. The mentoring program continued to develop, and soon they received recognition from local authorities for their work. Chapter 21. Reward for Effort. 6 months after the launch of the mentoring program, Jack received an invitation to participate in a conference on youth policy. At the conference, he addressed an audience of professionals working with young people. "We have created a mentoring program to help children from disadvantaged families find support, and I am proud that we were able to achieve such results." After the performance, a lot of people came up to him to thank him for his work. It was unexpectedly pleasant. Jack understood that their program was really changing the lives of children. Chapter 22. New Horizons. Over time, the mentoring program has become popular among the city's youth, and other districts have started to show interest in its implementation. Jack began working on expanding the program to reach more children from disadvantaged backgrounds. He organized training sessions for new mentors to prepare them to work with teenagers. Emily also decided to become a coach for new mentors. She understood how important adult support is for teenagers. Chapter 23. Rethinking. Despite the success of the program, Jack continued to reflect on his past, about the incident at the festival that changed his life. He understood that courage sometimes requires wisdom, and it is important to understand the consequences of your actions. One day, during a conversation with Emily, he shared his thoughts. "I think sometimes we need to be more careful when we make decisions, even if our intentions are good." Emily agreed. "Yes, I think so too. It is important to understand that our every action can affect other people." Chapter 24. The future lies ahead. The mentoring program continued to evolve, and soon it became an example for other cities. Jack felt proud that he was able to change the lives of many children. He knew that there was still a lot of work ahead, but now he had a team of like-minded people who were ready to support each other. Every new day brought new opportunities for growth, and Jack was ready for any challenges that lie ahead. Conclusion. Jack's story has become a symbol of change, both for himself and for the children he helped. His courage turned into strength for others, and now he knew how to use his mistakes for the benefit of others. Every new day brought new opportunities for growth, and the main thing was to stay true to your beliefs